So friends, today let's update 3 stories, all of which involve what we will now be referring to as the Trump trials. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, we're launching a new segment today. We have been in the investigative phase for what seems like an eternity, investigating the crimes of Donald Trump and his co-conspirators and his criminal associates. But we are undeniably about to enter a new phase, a phase that I've been referring to as the Trump trials. So can I use you all as a focus group for just a minute? Our volunteer team justice editor extraordinaire, Peter Sobey, there's Peter, has put together a graphic for this new segment, the Trump trials. Now, this new graphic is a work in progress, and I would love your feedback. Maybe the easiest way to provide feedback is to hop over to glennkirshner.com, my website, and you can leave me a message. I promise you I read all of the messages that come in, and let me know what you think. Now, I want to warn you, this graphic is long. We're going to cut it down, but by social media standards, this graphic probably lasts an eternity. It's a full 18 seconds. So sit back, get comfortable, and please have a look at our first crack at the intro for this new segment, the Trump trials. Okay, friends, we had a little bit of fun with that. Now, let's dig into 3 stories involving the Trump trials. And I think the first story is the biggest of the 3. It involves Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis, who is undeniably getting ready to indict Trump and company in August. Here is the new reporting. Headline from NBC News: Georgia prosecutor indicates charges in Trump election probe could come in early August, or as The Hill put it, Georgia prosecutor clears decks for possible Trump charges. And here is the reporting in that NBC article. The Georgia prosecutor investigating possible interference in the 2020 election by then-President Donald Trump and his allies has requested no trials or in-person hearings be held at the Fulton County Courthouse in early August, a sign of when a decision on charges could be announced. In a letter Thursday to the Chief Judge of the courthouse, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis said she plans on having 70% of her staff working remotely between July 31st and August 18th. Those who will remain in the courthouse at that time include the leadership staff and all armed investigators, according to a letter, a copy of which was obtained by NBC News. Quote, I respectfully request that judges not schedule trials and in-person hearings during the weeks beginning Monday, August 7th and Monday, August 14th, it said. Willis did not give a reason for the unusual request in the letter, which was first reported by the New York Times. Well, friends, DA Willis may not have been prepared to give a reason why she was making this extraordinary request, but I'll give a reason. A big old conspiracy indictment will be dropping in early August, and Fani Willis and her prosecutors will be occupying the judges full-time for 2 weeks, running all of the defendants who have been indicted through court for their arraignment hearings or their presentment hearings, maybe even some preliminary hearings. Those are all slightly different hearings, all of which are conducted on the front end of a criminal case shortly after indictments are returned by a grand jury. Remember when the special grand jury that heard from all of the witnesses down in Georgia finished its business and issued a report? We have yet to see the report, but what did we learn about that report, including from some of the grand jurors who gave interviews to the media as they were permitted to do? Well, we learned, among other things, that they had recommended that as many as 20 or more people be indicted for violating Georgia state election laws. So I suspect we are going to see dozens of people indicted, probably beginning in early August. And during those first 2 weeks, the week of August 7th and the week of August 14th, they are going to be in court as defendants in what I suspect will be a big old conspiracy case. Now, in a couple of recent interviews, I was asked, as a former career prosecutor, have you ever done anything like this where you've reached out to a court and you've asked a court not to schedule any trials or in-person hearings for a 2-week period? The answer is no. Notwithstanding 30 years as a federal prosecutor, I never did anything close to that. I racked my brain, and I think the closest thing I experienced was when I was a prosecutor in D.C., and we knew there were going to be enormous protests that were going to be held in the city. Sometimes we would reach out to the court, the chief judge of the court, and say, Judge, we just want to put you on notice that this big protest is scheduled for Saturday, for example, and it may be that there will be an unusually high number of arrests, such that in the days after the protest, we might be occupying lots and lots and lots of the court's time presenting any protesters who may have been arrested during the course of the protest. Sometimes that could be dozens, sometimes it could be hundreds or more. So that was the only loosely comparable circumstance I could think of when we would reach out to the court and say, hey, Judge, just for scheduling purposes, we want you to know about this event that may impact, the court's business in the coming days or weeks. But asking a court to clear the decks of all trials and in-person hearings for 2 weeks? No, I've never seen anything like that. And that is a signal that makes it clear to this old prosecutor that indictments are coming in early August. I cannot envision District Attorney Fani Willis asking the court to stand down from doing all other business if she was not going to be indicting people and running them through court during those first 2 weeks in August. So that is a big development. It's a cryptic development, yes, but it's a big development that signals indictments are coming. Let's turn to the second story. The second story involves E. Jean Carroll. Now, yes, E. Jean Carroll has already whooped Donald Trump in court, winning a jury verdict against him for him having assaulted her and defamed her. But E. Jean Carroll is not done with Donald Trump because she has another civil suit against him pending. You may recall the first civil suit E. Jean Carroll filed against Donald Trump was for defamatory statements he made while he was president. And then, of course, being the idiot that he is, he made those same defamatory statements about her after he left federal service, after he left the presidency, and she brought a new case against him because he couldn't possibly claim he had any immunity because the statements were, within the scope of his official duties as president. Well, he wasn't president anymore, and he has now lost that trial. But the first civil suit is still pending for the statements he made while president. Now, you may recall that when he had that corrupt Attorney General, Bill Barr, who was doing every favor he could think of for Donald Trump and Donald Trump's criminal associates, when E. Jean Carroll filed that case, Bill Barr substituted the Department of Justice for Donald Trump, right? So Donald Trump didn't have to contend with the case, and Bill Barr said, oh, these statements that Donald Trump made that were allegedly lies and defamatory about E. Jean Carroll? Well, he made them within the scope of his official duties as president. So the Department of Justice steps in and we assume responsibility for the suit, which would mean the suit would have to be dismissed if Donald Trump truly made these statements within the scope of his official duties as president. Well, now the Department of Justice has sent a letter that suggests that it may be rethinking this whole substitution thing. So there's a copy of the letter, and it's pretty cryptic. It doesn't come right out and say what the Department of Justice is intending to do, but let's look at just a couple of the sentences in this letter, which was filed with Judge Kaplan by the Department of Justice on May 26th. It asks for a briefing schedule on the issue of substitution. Bingo, that's the operative word. They want to revisit the question of substitution. In other words, maybe the Department of Justice shouldn't step in, give Donald Trump the assist. Maybe these statements really weren't within the scope of his official duties as president. In fact, I think the jury verdict makes clear that when Donald Trump made these statements as president, he absolutely lied about assaulting E. Jean Carroll. He absolutely defamed her by telling those lies about her. And now a jury has concluded that that's precisely what he did. How in the world can it be within the scope of your official duties as president to lie about someone you assaulted and defame them, damage their reputation, damage their earning potential, inflict emotional distress, pain, and suffering? How can that be within the official scope, the official scope of a president's duties? Come on, at some point morality has to come into play, and decency and integrity in office has to come into play. Now, I will hasten to add, even though this substitution started under Bill Barr, it continued under Merrick Garland. And that is a black mark on Merrick Garland's tenure, because that is, in my opinion, the wrong decision to make. But it looks like better late than never. The Department of Justice may be reconsidering the substitution issue. Let's go back to the letter for a moment. It says, the Attorney General makes the initial decision as to whether the defendant employee, that's Donald Trump, was acting within the scope of his office or employment at the time of the incident, which would be the lies and defamatory statements he made. But it adds, the Attorney General's determination about whether the person is acting within the scope of his official duties is framed by the allegations of the operative complaint. And now that E. Jean Carroll has filed an amended complaint in that case, the Department of Justice needs to reassess the substitution issue. So no, they don't come right out and say, we've given it a relook and we no longer think the Department of Justice should take responsibility for this litigation, so we're going to properly put Donald Trump back in as the defendant, as the respondent, and we're not going to defend him as having acted within the scope of his official duties when he lied about and defamed E. Jean Carroll, as is now bolstered by a jury verdict that that's exactly what he did. That's a good development. So friends, let's turn to the third and final story, and I think this really is the least consequential of the three, but it has to do with the Trump trials. Here's the reporting from NBC News. Prosecutors say they have a recording of Trump and a witness in Manhattan DA case. And that article begins, prosecutors in New York have informed attorneys for Donald Trump that the evidence in their hush money case against the former president includes an audio recording of him and a witness, a court filing made public Friday, shows. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office made the disclosure in a filing this week called an automatic discovery form and said the evidence had already been disclosed to Trump's attorneys. The filing does not identify the witness or say when the recording was made or when Trump's lawyers were made aware of it. So friends, why do I say this is probably the least consequential development? Well, because we already know that there's a recording between Donald Trump and a witness. That witness is Michael Cohen. As the NBC article goes on to state, a key witness in the case, former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, previously released a secretly taped audio recording of a discussion he had with Trump about the hush money payments in 2016. It's unclear if the recording referred to in the court filing is the same one, but I suspect it probably is. We don't know, but I think that's likely. So this makes this story, I think, less consequential than the development in the E. Jean Carroll case or the development in District Attorney Fani Willis's case. So friends, let's finish with this. I'll be doing my best to capture and consolidate in my daily videos all of the important developments in the Trump trials. And as I mentioned, I hope you'll consider going over to my website, glennkirshner.com, and dropping me a note about either the new graphic or my coverage of the Trump trials, or anything you'd like me to know or you would like me to cover. But I can promise you, I will be covering the Trump trials every day, like white on rice, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.